shocking truth about Junkyard Dog's death left fans heartbroken. For years, no one knew what he was really going through, until after he passed away. When the Dark Side documentary came out, it revealed his long battle with drug and alcohol abuse, and the entire wrestling world was stunned. So buckle up, because today we're diving into the real story behind Junkyard Dog's tragic downfall. Junkyard Dog's story is one of those that hits you right in the heart. Behind his big personality and the wild energy he brought to the ring, there was a side of him that very few people ever saw. Throughout much of his wrestling career, JYD battled with substance abuse, a struggle that many in the wrestling world quietly knew about, but the public never truly understood until years later. Back in the 1980s, wrestling was a non-stop grind. The WWF schedule was brutal, shows every night, endless travel, and barely any time to rest or recover. For someone like JYD, who gave everything he had every time he stepped into the ring, that kind of lifestyle took a massive toll. The long drives, the pressure to stay on top, and the constant physical pain only pushed him further down a dark path. Drugs and alcohol became his way of coping with the exhaustion and loneliness that came with fame. It wasn't until much later, through the 2023 episode of Dark Side of the Ring, that fans finally got a closer look at what was really going on behind the curtain. The documentary didn't just focus on his success, it showed the painful truth of his struggles. It talked about how his dependency issues affected not only his career, but also his relationships and health. For many fans, it was the first time they realized that behind the fun-loving, crowd-pleasing Junkyard Dog was a man quietly fighting his own demons. The phrase, "the terrible secret Junkyard Dog died with," started to make sense after that episode aired. It wasn't a scandal or a mystery, it was his pain, hidden behind the bright lights and the roar of the crowd. Tragically, his life came to an end far too soon. In 1998, at just 45 years old, JYD died in a single-car accident while driving back home from his daughter's college graduation. It was such a heartbreaking moment, not just because of how he died, but because it felt like he was finally trying to put his life back together. He had just celebrated one of his daughter's biggest milestones, and then just like that, he was gone. Even now, his story serves as a reminder that sometimes the heroes we see on screen are fighting silent battles we never truly understand. JYD's career was nothing short of incredible, and it's heartbreaking to know what he went through behind the scenes just to keep that magic alive. He pushed himself through pain, pressure, and personal struggles, all to entertain the fans and give us those unforgettable moments in the ring. He literally put his own well-being on the line to make sure we got the show we loved. He started his journey in the late 1970s. Back then, he wasn't the big name we all remember. He began his career under his real name, wrestling in smaller territories like NWA Tri-State, the Continental Wrestling Association, and Southeastern Championship Wrestling. He was learning the ropes, paying his dues, and doing everything he could to stand out in a tough business. At one point, he even wrestled under the name Leroy Rochester in another promotion, trying to find a character that clicked with fans. He spent time overseas, wrestling in Germany, gaining experience and building his name. But things truly started changing when he found himself in Canada, working for Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling promotion. It was there that he became known as Big Daddy Ritter, and that's when people really started to notice him. He was strong, charismatic, and had that rare ability to connect with a crowd instantly. During that time, he even held the North American Heavyweight Championship twice, proving he wasn't just another big guy. He was something special. But his real breakthrough came when he returned to the United States and joined a new territory run by Cowboy Bill Watts. Watts saw something in Ritter that others didn't. He gave him a new name and character, one inspired by Jim Croce's hit song, Bad, Bad Leroy Brown. That's how Junkyard Dog was born. With his chain around his neck, white boots, and raw energy, JYD was unlike anything fans had ever seen before. He came to the ring pushing a cart full of junk, calling it the junk wagon, and his entrance alone could light up an arena. At first, he wasn't winning many matches, but it didn't matter. His personality, charisma, and sheer presence won people over quickly. Before long, he went from being an underdog to the biggest hero in the entire territory. Crowds would chant his name so loudly, you could barely hear the ring announcer. Parents brought their kids to see him. Fans wore dog collars to the shows. He became a symbol of strength and pride, especially for black fans who saw in him something rare at that time, a strong, confident, main event black superstar who didn't play a side character. His feuds became legendary. One of his most famous rivalries was with the fabulous Freebirds. That feud changed everything. In one shocking storyline, the Freebirds attacked JYD and blinded him with a hair cream. It was so realistic that people believed it actually happened. Around the same time, JYD's wife gave birth to their first child, and the storyline tied that in, saying he couldn't see his newborn daughter. It was emotional, heartbreaking, and powerful storytelling. The fans were furious, so much so that the Freebirds needed police escorts to get in and out of arenas because the audience wanted revenge for what they had done to their hero. The rivalry ended with one of the most iconic matches in wrestling history, a steel cage dog collar match between JYD and Michael Hayes at the Superdome. By this point, Junkyard Dog wasn't just a wrestler, he was a cultural icon. In New Orleans, he was more popular than most athletes in the city. Kids adored him. There was even a survey among school children that showed JYD was the #1 sports figure they wanted to meet, ranking above football and basketball legends like Archie Manning and Pistol Pete Maravich. That says everything about how deeply he connected with people. He also had unforgettable feuds with wrestlers like Ted DiBiase and Butch Reed. His storyline with DiBiase became one of the most talked about rivalries of that era. They had been friends and partners. But when DiBiase turned on JYD, the betrayal was huge. It led to a dramatic loser leaves town match, which JYD lost thanks to DiBiase's cheating tactics. After that, a masked wrestler named Stagger Lee mysteriously appeared, and he looked and fought a lot like Junkyard Dog. Fans knew exactly what was going on, but the bad guys couldn't prove it. Stagger Lee started beating everyone, including DiBiase, until eventually he disappeared right when the storyline said JYD's suspension had ended. Then JYD returned, reclaiming his spot and his championship. It was brilliant storytelling that kept fans hooked every week. Music was also a big part of JYD's character. He'd come to the ring to songs like Another One Bites the Dust and Atomic Dog, and it made his entrances unforgettable. Fans would get up, dance, and sing along. He made wrestling fun. So when he finally joined the biggest wrestling company in the world, it was no surprise that he instantly became one of their biggest stars. In the WWF, Junkyard Dog continued to shine. He brought that same energy, but now it was on a national stage. His connection with the crowd was unmatched. Kids loved him, families adored him, and his charisma made every appearance special. He would often invite kids into the ring after matches to dance with him, making him one of the most loved wrestlers of his time. His theme song, Grab Them Cakes, which he recorded with Vicky Sue Robinson, became part of his identity. He wasn't just wrestling anymore. He was entertaining on every level. He had big moments on pay-per-view events, battled top stars, and even won a prestigious tournament that showcased some of the best wrestlers in the company. But wrestling's schedule was grueling. It was tough to stay at the top with constant travel, physical pain, and endless matches. Over time, JYD's popularity began to slow down, and after a few high-profile losses, he eventually left the company. He wasn't done, though. He moved on to the National Wrestling Alliance, where he made another big impact, even saving another wrestler during a live segment, which instantly reignited his popularity. He had memorable matches with his old rivals, and at one point, he even went toe-to-toe with Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship. JYD actually defeated Flair several times, though not for the title. Those matches proved he still had that spark, the charisma and strength that made him a fan favorite from the start. For a while, he was part of a faction with other big names like Sting and Paul Orndorff, which kept him in major storylines. He also captured another championship in a 6-man tag team match, teaming up with Ricky Morton and Tommy Rich. The trio had fun, high-energy matches that reminded fans why they loved JYD so much. As the years went on, JYD began to slow down. He lost some of the weight that had made him such an intimidating figure in the ring, trying to get into better shape and adjust to a changing wrestling scene. He still appeared on major shows, teaming up with friends like Ron Simmons and Barry Windham, and even formed new tag teams to stay active. Eventually, though, he left the bigger promotions and focused on the independent circuit. But that didn't mean his influence faded. He was still a major draw wherever he went. Fans came just to see him smile, dance, and do his signature headbutt. He even started training younger wrestlers, including future stars like Rodney Mack. Outside the ring, he lived a modest life. He worked normal jobs between appearances, including a stint at Walmart and even repossessing cars. But no matter what he did, wrestling was always part of him. He also founded a wrestling stable called the Dog Pound, keeping his spirit alive in smaller promotions and inspiring a new generation of wrestlers to follow their dreams. His final major appearance came shortly before his death, at a special event where fans were thrilled to see him again. He looked older, a little worn down, but that signature smile was still there. Nobody could have imagined that it would be one of the last times they'd ever see him. Even today, decades later, Junkyard Dog's name still carries weight. He was more than just a wrestler. He was a trailblazer, a hero, and a reminder that charisma and heart can take you further than anything else. He broke barriers, inspired countless people, and left behind a legacy that still shines bright in wrestling history. Junkyard Dog may have had his struggles, but when he stepped into that ring, he gave fans a reason to cheer, believe, and feel joy. And that's something that will never fade. And that wraps up today's video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an update. We'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.